Welcome and thank you for joining us for our webinar on banking and credit. So today we're going to look at Canadian banking system, the alternative banking sector, establishing some credit, and some O2O resources that are available to you. Now, let's look at some housing choices. And why are we looking at these housing choices? We are looking at, where do you want to live, a city versus a town? What will it cost to live in that city? Will you need a car? Will you need public transit? And what job opportunities are there for you? Now, there are some costs to housing here in Ontario, and a lot of times when a newcomer arrives in Canada, they oftentimes are not quite clear on whether or not they should buy a home or they should rent a home. So we just kind of wanted to use this webinar to just as an introduction and a base to some of the things that you are going to be needing your bank account for. So you are going to need your banking information if you are going to purchase a home, or if you are going to rent, you'll also require a bank account in order to make your mortgage payments or your rent payments or your energy payments. Some of the essential things that we look at in terms of what you will need to pay for are your clothing, food, your telephone, internet services, and your cable services if you are choosing to have cable services. So again, these are just some of the basic things that you're going to need your bank account for. Now, let's look at the meat and potatoes of this webinar. So, Canadian banking system. In Canada, we've got several banks. However, there are 5 main banks, and they are the flagship banks, and we refer to them as the Big Five. Within the Big Five is the Bank of Nova Scotia, the Bank of Montreal, Canadian Imperial Bank, for short it's called CIBC. We also have TD, Toronto Dominion, or Canada Trust, and there's RBC, the Royal Bank of Canada. So these are some of the most common banks that you will see across Canada. Now, Canada has a very competitive and affordable banking system. So when you think about your bank accounts and how much fees you want to pay, one of the things that we do highlight is that you do shop around for the best possible deals that are being offered to newcomers. You may go to www.osfi-bsif.gc.ca for more information. Some of the benefits of having a bank account, you may also go to www.consumerhandbook.ca. But if you think about the beauty of being able to access your money whenever you want, you're able to do direct deposits. And this means that you give permission for another person or a company or an organization to deposit money into your bank account. You also have the ability to cash your checks whenever you want. Sometimes it is not possible to use direct deposit, and so you may have a personal check that needs to be cashed. And as opposed to running around and trying to find a place to do that, you can actually deposit that check in your bank account and it will be taken care of. Having a bank account also gives you the ability to effectively budget your money. It allows you to create credit history, because once you're banking with a particular bank, they can see your patterns, and so it will establish a pattern of credit. And it's easy and very safe for your money to remain in a bank. where you are not being charged anything in excess to keep it there. There are a few important questions that you should ask before opening a bank account, and some of those are, what documents are required to open your bank account? In different countries, different documents are required. Some countries perhaps ask you to provide they will ask you to provide your birth certificate to them. Others will ask you to perhaps provide your driver's license. In Canada, you are required to provide a few different pieces of identification, and you also want to ask about the interest that is going to be paid on the money that you're saving in your account. You want to know how easy or how hard it will be for you to access the money that you have placed in your account. After all, it's your money. So there are two major pieces of identification. Some banks will ask you for your Canadian driver's license, perhaps your permanent residence card, your social insurance number, or a passport. And that passport could be your Canadian passport if you're a Canadian citizen, or your passport from your home country if you are a permanent resident, or if you are a student or a foreign worker who's working here in Canada. There are two different accounts, checking as opposed to savings, and I'm sure that many of you are quite familiar with this system. The checking account is designed for everyday banking, so you use it for bill payments, buying your groceries and clothing and things like that, whereas your savings account is not intended for everyday use, and you would use that just to save money, to put money away and not touch it. Now, after you've opened your account, there are several ways for you to access the money that you've put into the account. You can do so through the use of debit cards, credit cards. You may also physically go to an ATM machine and withdraw money directly, or you also have the ability and the opportunity to walk directly into the bank and speak with a teller face to face about your money and how much you would like to withdraw. There are some important banking terminology that you should familiarize yourself with. For example, NSF would be not sufficient funds, and that would mean that you don't have enough money in your bank account to cover a particular check that you may have written. There's overdraft protection, and this is what the bank, this is money that the bank will make available to their clients who are in good standing and have a very good credit history. They will provide overdraft protection so that you're able to cover your checks and not have to go into the NSF category. Your PIN number, that's your personal identification number, that number is unique to you. It is a passcode that you should not be sharing with anyone, not even family members, because if you do and your account is breached, then the bank is not responsible. There is e-transfer, and that means a fast and very secure way to transfer funds using your email address. There's online banking and direct deposits. We've talked about direct deposit before. Online banking is where you're able to access your banking information via the internet. A few banking tips that you should think about before you open an account, or if you've just opened an account, you want to know what is the fee for that account. There are some accounts that will come with no fees, and some have smaller fees while some have higher fees. So you want to make sure that you're asking these questions. If you are going to use an ATM that is not your bank's ATM, so for example, if you are a Scotiabank user and you decided that you wanted to withdraw money from CIBC, chances are Scotiabank will charge you about $3 for using another ATM, and so will TD. So you want to find out those fees prior to going about and using another machine. Choose a very difficult PIN number so that it's not something it's easy to remember. For example, don't use your child's year of birth or your husband's birth date or things like that that people are able to use to guess. Don't give your PIN number to anyone. Regularly check your bank statements, and please do enroll for online banking for convenience. It is so easy to use. You'd be surprised how simple it is to access your money once you have chosen to use online banking. We have what is known as the alternative banking sector, and within that sector, there are different places that you can go and access cash, such as a check cashing outlet. However, even though these are convenient places to be able to access money, please do keep in mind that there are related fees for using this service. People without bank accounts generally use these services. So a lot of times people think that, you know, it is okay for me to not have a bank account. I can cash my check at a money mart or a cashing outlet. There are usually very huge fees that are attached to these outlets. So before accessing these services, do some research, speak to someone, go into these places and get additional information. Funds from a check are usually made available immediately. However, there are some, you know, pros and cons to that. For example, you could go there and you could cash your check and you would get the money immediately. The difference, however, is that they will charge you a higher rate to cash your check as opposed to if you had gone to the bank. Again, there are very high interest rates that are associated with these particular cashing outlets. Okay. Now, there's also, for example, payday loans. These places are quite similar to the cashing, the money marts and cashing outlets. These payday loans are generally short-term loans, and they're usually less than $500 or about $500. As a borrower, you will be expected to repay the loan on your next payday. You can access your checking account, the owner of the payday loan facility must have access to your checking account, and you must write a check out for the full balance of the money that you owe. So if you borrowed $400 today, you must write a check for the amount of $400, and that would come due on the next payday that you are going to get. So think about these things. Again, there are usually high interest rates associated with these fees. There are what we call pawn shops, which they will give you cash in exchange for some valuable property that you have. The loans will be provided equal to the value of your property and sometimes less than what your property is valued at. And the management of that pawn shop may sell your items if you're unable to repay that debt. So definitely that is something to think about. If you have never accessed or used an ATM, I'm just going to do a slight demo for you here on how to use an ATM. Okay? So the FCAC is the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada, and they are the agency that you would go to in order for you to find out information on consumer issues. And these issues are this website is a government website, so it is quite credible and a website that you can always go to whenever you need any support in terms of consumer services. Now we have a practice for you through an ATM. So for example, let's take a look at this here. This would be your typical setup for an automated teller machine. Okay, so first of all, they'll tell you to insert your card. So when you go to the machine, you would insert your card there. Okay, so now your card's inserted. They'll ask you to choose the language of your choice, so you will choose your language, and then you'll put in your PIN number. Okay, so let's say you've now entered your PIN number. What is it that you would like to do? Would you like to withdraw money from the account? Would you like to transfer money? Do you want to pay a bill? Do you want to deposit? Do you want cash or do you want your account balance? So now, let's say we would like to withdraw some money. So I'm going to withdraw some money from my checking account because remember, we don't use our savings account. We just save money there. So I'm going to withdraw $2,000. Okay. There. I've put the money, the amount in that I want. Now I need to select OK. They've told me that my daily withdrawal limit has been exceeded, which means that if you go to the bank and you put, there's a limit on your account, let's say, for example, $500, and you try to withdraw more than that $500, it will tell you that you have exceeded your limit. So let's go for something that is a little bit less. How about $200? Okay, so we're now going to try to withdraw $200 from my bank account. And that is from my checking account. Now I've selected the amount, select OK. My transaction is being processed. There goes my $200. I now have $200. And now they're asking me, would you like a receipt? I always take a receipt, so I'll say yes. There goes my receipt. You take your receipt, and the next question is, do you want another transaction? No, I do not want another transaction. There goes my card. Thank you, and please come again. So once again, if you do want to familiarize yourself with using an ATM, please do visit that website. I will send you links to the website once the webinar has been completed. Now let's take a look at your credit. Banking and credit usually goes hand in hand. So let's look at how you can go about establishing credit in Canada. There are several types of credits, okay? So you've got revolving credit, and the different types of revolving credit would look like credit cards, retail store cards, and your overdraft protection. The credit cards will come from a financial institution. The retail cards are generally from the retail store. You can only make purchases at that particular store. If you've got a credit card, you can make purchases, pay your bills, go online and make online purchases. And the conditions for that would be that there is a credit limit, there are minimum payments that needs to be made, and there's an interest charge that is applied. The retail store cards, usually the credit limit is there as well, but the interest rates are usually 28% as opposed to 19%. And your overdraft protection is connected to your bank account, which will be connected to some fees, and some interest costs are added to that. Then there's what we call installment credit or loans. So things like buy now, pay later. These are provided by retail stores where you usually purchase high-cost furniture, and you're able to pay in full or in installments. There's rent-to-own stores where you can rent furniture and then slowly own that furniture. And the terms vary quite differently depending on what store you go to. So if you're going to look into something like that, it'll be worthwhile to do some research prior to making that kind of commitment. There's the consumer loans, which are usually attached to your financial institution, and they are generally used for, purchases, big purchases such as cars, perhaps home renovations, and there is a repayment schedule that is associated with that. Now, let's look at the credit card features. So if you get a credit card, you will have things like annual fees. Not all credit cards carry an annual fee, but some do. There is the APR, your annual percentage rate, and that describes the interest rate for the entire year rather than on a monthly basis. Different credit cards have different types of APRs. So once again, a word of advice to you, make sure that you do compare these different rates, it will work just to your benefit. There is a credit limit on your credit cards. The money is not endless. The money does not belong to you. It is actually a loan. And there's a grace period within which you are given. Usually the credit card companies will give you 21 days to repay that money. If you pay in full each month before the due date, you will not be charged interest. There are minimum payments that are required to be made. And when we talk about minimum payments, we're talking about the smallest amount of money that you can pay back on the amount that you owe. And that's usually about 2 to 10% of the balance owed. There are some rewards programs that are attached to these credit cards. There's insurance and other benefits that comes with them. But again, whenever you're going to commit to something, please do some research prior to spending additional money for insurance and things like that. And then there is cash advance that allows you to borrow money from your credit card. However, there is no grace period usually associated with the cash advance. And so that means that the interest begins to accrue immediately when you take that money from the credit card. So if you borrow $500 from your credit card, the credit card company begins to charge you that interest as of the moment you take that money from the credit card. Whereas if you had made a purchase with your credit card, you would not have had to pay the interest immediately. What you would need to do is you would need to make your payment within 21 days. Hopefully that makes sense to you. When you're choosing a credit card, always research different institutions that are offering you credit cards. These are just some tips that we have for you. Think about what you need as opposed to, what you want. Shop around and try to get the best interest and rewards. For example, there are points that are attached to your cards and you can collect points to travel. And never forget to read the fine print. There are some prepaid credit cards, but you want to understand that they are not a form of credit. Some of them are single-use or reloadable. You cannot establish credit using them, and they do not improve your credit history. Some of them also comes with additional fees and costs to use them. So once again, like I've said earlier in the webinar, please do some research prior to making those kinds of commitment. We have a credit bureau. We have two credit bureaus actually. There's TransUnion, and they can be reached at 1-866-525-0262 or at www.tuc.ca. There's also Equifax Canada, and they can be reached at 1-800-465-7166 or www.equifax.ca. Now, the way the credit bureau works is that the credit bureau, whether it's TransUnion or Equifax, they do your credit report. And your credit report is usually requested by lenders, people who are thinking of lending you money. So the bank, a car dealership, a furniture store, a credit card company, a mortgage company, these places. So the credit bureau will provide your credit report, and they will then provide your credit score to these companies, whether your credit score is A+ or A- or an F. They are the ones who provide that information. So once again, please do visit the website Equifax or TransUnion. This way you'll familiarize yourselves with the way in which the credit bureau works. The credit reports are summaries of your credit history, and again, the report is created whenever you borrow money or apply for credit. The credit report has factual information on your credit cards and loans. And your telephone, your cell phone or internet accounts may also be reported even though they aren't credit accounts. So if you don't pay your bills in a timely manner, these will also be reported to your credit bureau, and they may remain on your credit history. Visit www.fcac-acfc.gc.ca for more information. Your credit score is an assigned 3-digit number, and the numbers making up the score is awarded based on the way you repay your debt. So if you pay your credit cards within the 21 days that you are allowed the grace period, that is reported on your credit score. The Canadian credit scores range from 300 to 900 points. And the lenders, like I explained earlier, access your credit score to establish your credit worthiness from the credit bureaus. Your credit score is also used to determine the interest rate that they will give you when you apply for a loan. So if you've got a credit score between 900 and 750, you've got excellent credit. Between 750 to 700, that is good credit. 699 to 660, again, you're in the good area. Then you go to 659 to 620, that is not so good. 579 to 500 is extremely poor, and that means you are in trouble and needs to rebuild your credit. Once again, please do visit the TransUnion or Equifax website, and you will learn a lot more about your credit worthiness and how credit is calculated. Always pay your bills on time. Pay your bills in full by the due date. If you do that, you will be on top of it. Your credit will be built, and you won't have to worry about having credit score that is below 500. Try to pay your debts as soon as possible. Don't go over the limit on your credit card. Keep your credit card balance well below the limit, and do not apply for many credit cards, as this does impact very negatively on your credit score. Now we're coming to the very end of our webinar, and I wanted to just talk to you about some of the available resources that we do have. We have our website, the Orientation to Ontario website, where you can access pre-arrival and post-arrival resources. If you are thinking about moving to Canada, or if you have moved to Canada, you are able to access information through this website that will be very beneficial for you. For example, we do have a settlement plan, and the settlement plan helps you to outline your goals, highlights the areas that you should concentrate your efforts on when you are going to be planning things, for example, like your personal finances. So you're going to research banking options and open a bank account. You may need to speak to a banking representative about banking services for newcomers, apply for a credit card, or apply for child tax benefits. These are some of the things that you can use your settlement plan to do. If you are choosing to attend one of our workshops while you are here in Canada, these are accessible through our website. You simply need to go to the website and choose the agency that is closest to you and visit that agency, register. In the area where we say more information, you select that and you register for one of the workshops and visit the workshop, where you'll be able to interact with a settlement worker as well as other newcomers to Canada. We have our fact sheets. There are about 18 fact sheets, and you can access those by sending us an email, and we will send the one that you need to you. We have additional webinars that will be coming up. So living in Canada and Ontario is a great one. Housing, transportation, education and training, and business and self-employment. If you do have any additional questions, please do feel free to send us an email at o2o@costi.org. You may visit our website at www.settlement.org, and the website is in both English and French. You may also call us at 1-855-626-0000. Thank you so much for joining us this evening for our webinar. If you have any questions, once again, please do not hesitate to send us an email and we will be more than happy to assist you. Thank you, and I hope that you'll join us for additional webinars. Have a great evening.